beneath the frozen heart of North Night Palace, where ancient formations hummed with power and glacial flames devoured the air. A single gamble was unfolding, one that could either shatter the limits of cultivation or consume everyone present. If you enjoy my way of explaining and storytelling, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really motivates me to keep creating. As the war raged on outside, a tempest churned deep within the hill of stones inside profound jade cave. At the center of the formation, Han Li sat within a blooming purple lotus, his fingers locked in an incantation gesture. A thread of purple flame so thin it seemed almost insubstantial spiraled outward from his palm and drifted into the enormous sphere of light suspended before him. His flame was not alone. Streams of black, white, yellow, and green glacial flames surged forward as well, each one originating from the other cultivators seated within their own lotus thrones. At this moment, all 5 cultivators bore pale complexions and weary expressions, their exhaustion evident after the long ordeal. The vast sphere of light was wrapped in wandering flames that circled endlessly around it. Within its glowing depths sat a solitary figure in meditation. The person inside was none other than Master Arctic Dragon. Gone was the frail old dwarf that others once knew. His body had stretched to nearly 3 meters in height. His aged features reversed until he appeared no older than a man in the prime of his 30s. Yet despite this youthful transformation, the contours of his face still carried the unmistakable traces of his former appearance. The sight was both astonishing and deeply strange. At that moment, immense currents of pure essence pierced into his body, shoulders, abdomen, and the back of his neck, each in the form of glittering silver blades. Though embedded halfway into his flesh, not a single drop of blood escaped them. Yet the most unsettling sight lay elsewhere. From the narrow slits of his half-closed eyes, several worms of light wriggled outward, each glowing with a different color. It was as if his very flesh had become their nest, for they continuously burrowed in and out of his body without pause. Every time one of these worms emerged, Arctic Dragon's body trembled violently, and a fleeting expression of unbearable agony flashed across his face. A closer inspection would reveal a startling truth: these light worms were not living creatures at all, but condensed manifestations of the various glacial flames. Each time a worm crawled back out from beneath his skin, it had shrunk slightly. Once a worm diminished to a certain size, it would explode with a soft bang, scattering into fragments of light. Immediately afterward, a strand of flame of the same color would condense again, reforming into a new worm of light that burrowed straight back into Arctic Dragon's body. The cycle repeated endlessly. Meanwhile, another extraordinary sight hovered outside his dantian. A nascent soul, only 3 inches tall, yet perfectly resembling Arctic Dragon, floated there. Its tiny hands were clasped in an incantation gesture, and its entire body was enveloped in layers of flickering blue flames. The worms of light seemed completely unaffected by those flames. They parted through the azure fire as if it were nothing, slipping into the nascent soul's nose before emerging again through its mouth moments later. The nascent soul remained utterly expressionless. Blue flames pulsed rhythmically from its body, giving the entire scene an eerie, mystical aura. Time passed, how long none could say. Suddenly, Arctic Dragon's body trembled violently. His eyes snapped open. Almost at the same instant, Han Li and the others seemed to sense a signal. Their hand seals changed nearly simultaneously. The massive sphere of light above them collapsed in an instant, unraveling into the various flames that had originally formed it. Each stream of glacial fire returned swiftly to its respective master. The lotus seats beneath the cultivators dissolved silently into the air. Without a word, the 5 of them immediately swallowed medicinal pills and produced spirit stones before settling into meditation to recover. This ritual had already repeated itself more than a dozen times over the past several days. Each cycle drained the majority of their magical power. Fortunately, all of them possessed abundant spirit stones and rare medicinal pills. With their assistance, they were able to restore themselves within half a day. This time when Han Li and the others withdrew their glacial flames, Arctic Dragon closed his eyes again as if entering a brief meditative trance. As time slowly passed, the old woman was the first to awaken. Her gaze fell upon Arctic Dragon, still seated within the fading sphere of light. She let out a long sigh. "I truly admire fellow Taoist Arctic Dragon," she said slowly. "To endure the torment of purification by 5 flames, even though we carefully control the power of our fires, the agony must be worse than death itself." Her eyes narrowed thoughtfully. "It seems you must have cultivated some form of body-forging technique. Otherwise, your body would have collapsed long ago. Relying on spiritual sense alone could never allow someone to survive such suffering." The azure-robed middle-aged man soon opened his eyes as well and gave a faint smile. "Lady Long truly sees clearly," he said. "Senior Marshal Brother Arctic Dragon cultivated that technique many years ago. His body is far more resilient than that of ordinary cultivators." No wonder the grey-robed monk added solemnly. "However, we have already done nearly everything possible. His essence has been purified several times by our flames." He glanced toward Arctic Dragon's body. "I suspect both his physical body and nascent soul have nearly reached their limits. We are approaching the final stage. In 2 days, we will know whether this attempt succeeds." From the side, Han Li spoke calmly. "However, the profound jade glacial qi within the formation appears somewhat insufficient. We may need to halt the process temporarily to replenish it." Within the fading sphere of light, Arctic Dragon suddenly spoke in surprise. "I did not expect fellow Taoist Han to grasp the technique to such a degree." His eyes opened slightly. "That is correct. We must gather more profound jade glacial qi than what we originally sealed within the formation." Han Li's heart stirred slightly as he turned to look toward him. At some unknown moment, Arctic Dragon had already risen to his feet. His figure slowly floated upward from the condensed glacial light. The 5 silver blades that had pierced his body earlier had vanished completely, leaving behind not even the slightest wound. A charming smile appeared on his face. Han Li chuckled softly. "Really, that was merely a guess." As Master Arctic Dragon retrieved a blue robe from his storage pouch and draped it over his body, he continued speaking. "So Brother Han has already reached such a level of understanding. Then tell me, how do you judge my chances of breaking through this bottleneck?" His gaze sharpened slightly. "Do your thoughts differ from mine?" Maintaining his calm expression, Han Li replied casually, "You must be joking. This secret technique was discovered by you. How could my understanding surpass yours?" Arctic Dragon chuckled but said nothing more. Still floating in the air, he flicked his fingers. Several spell seals shot outward, vanishing into the surrounding light barrier the moment they appeared. The formation emitted a series of strange droning sounds before abruptly falling silent. The 5 pillars of light vanished in the blink of an eye, and the cultivators descended gently back to the ground. Once the barrier disappeared, a storm of glacial light surged in from outside the cavern. However, the cultivators were already prepared. Their glacial flames immediately rose once more, shielding them from the freezing tempest. In the coming day, Arctic Dragon announced, "I will make some minor revisions to the formation and gather more glacial qi." He extended his arms and respectfully saluted Han Li and the others. "Please take this opportunity to rest. I will still require your assistance afterward." His voice carried unmistakable sincerity. "If this attempt truly succeeds, I will agree to any of your requests, so long as they are within reason." The old woman chuckled lightly. "Do not worry, fellow Taoist Shi. Since we have already agreed, we will certainly do our best." Her eyes glimmered thoughtfully. "And if this technique truly allows one to advance to the deity transformation stage, we may attempt something similar ourselves one day." The monk nodded calmly. "If any of us manage to reach late nascent soul stage, the opportunity may indeed arise." Han Li merely nodded without speaking. Arctic Dragon appeared deeply satisfied. After expressing his gratitude loudly, he turned his attention to adjusting the spell formation. Han Li and the 2 other outside cultivators returned to the chamber containing the great Yang Essence Stone to rest. Before long, the azure-robed middle-aged man and Bai Mengxin followed as well. Although restoring their magical power was not difficult, controlling glacial flames continuously for several days had drained their spiritual senses. Soon a full day passed. When Han Li and the others emerged from the stone chamber, Master Arctic Dragon was once again seated cross-legged at the center of the formation. A sphere of glacial chi surrounded him, but this time it was several times larger than the day before. It seemed he had indeed spent the entire day gathering more glacial energy exposed to the freezing storm outside. Just as Han Li was about to examine the subtle changes made to the formation, a strange sound suddenly escaped from the monk's mouth. Turning around, Han Li saw the monk rising slowly into the air, his expression oddly distorted. Han Li's expression immediately changed. He quickly glanced around the cavern. The exit had vanished. Even the cauldron that had created the passage was gone. Fellow Taoist Arctic Dragon, what is the meaning of this? The old woman demanded sharply. Her calm demeanor had vanished, replaced by obvious vigilance. Arctic Dragon remained perfectly composed. With a faint smile, he replied, There is no need to worry. I simply did not wish for anything to disturb us, so I temporarily sealed the exit. His tone remained light. I suspect I may also need to borrow the power of the celestial blue cauldron in order to break through. So that is the case, the monk said slowly. He and the old woman exchanged a cautious glance. As for Han Li, his eyes narrowed slightly as he gazed silently upward. The atmosphere inside the cavern grew tense. Sensing their unease, Arctic Dragon chuckled again and spoke in a reassuring tone. It seems my actions were somewhat inconsiderate and caused you unnecessary concern. He waved his sleeve casually. In that case, I will not use the cauldron. How about I place the celestial blue cauldron outside the cave? The entrance will still need to remain sealed for the time being. With that, he flicked his sleeve. Wrapped in blue flames, the cauldron shot into the air and flew nearly a kilometer upward, coming to rest just beneath the sealed exit. Although Han Li and the others did not show it openly, they all relaxed somewhat once the cauldron was moved far beyond Arctic Dragon's reach. After a brief moment of thought, the old woman's tense expression softened. She burst into hearty laughter. Fellow Taoist Arctic Dragon is truly thoughtful. She waved her hand dismissively. How could any of us harbor suspicions toward you? We were merely curious. Her smile returned. Since time is pressing, let us continue and help you break through this bottleneck. The grey-robed monk stealthily transmitted a message to Han Li through sound transmission. Brother Han, what do you think? Although fellow Taoist Arctic Dragon's explanation sounds reasonable, I cannot help but feel uneasy. As for fellow Taoist Long, I happen to know that she has some connection with North Night Palace. We should remain cautious. Han Li's heart stirred slightly. He shot a brief glance at the monk and saw that the man was smiling calmly at him, as if nothing unusual had occurred. Just as Han Li was quietly pondering the monk's warning, a tremendous boom suddenly erupted from Spirit Void Hall far above them. The cavern trembled faintly as though struck by a colossal blow. Surprise flickered across everyone's faces. At that very moment, anyone standing atop the giant mountain of North Night Palace would have witnessed a breathtaking sight. A majestic snow phoenix over 100 meters in length circled the barrier that enveloped the enormous mountain. Glacial winds screamed through the air as its massive wings beat against the sky. Clutched within its claws was a colossal glacier nearly 3 times its own size. Without hesitation, the phoenix released it. The massive glacier plunged downward like a falling mountain, tearing through the air before crashing violently against the defensive barrier. The impact erupted in a world-shaking explosion. Blinding streams of white light burst outward as the magnificent barrier twisted and warped under the tremendous pressure. Though the formation ultimately held firm, the shockwave shattered many of the more fragile buildings below. The giant phoenix was none other than the demon form of the silver-robed woman. Her fury still burned fiercely after witnessing the slaughter of the low-grade ice sea demons under the devastating power of the sea-calming bell. As a heavenly spirit beast aligned with the ice attribute, she was capable of ignoring the outer grand formation formed from glacial mist. This allowed her to pass directly through it and reach the city of ice itself, where she could wreak havoc upon North Night Valley's defensive restrictions. Although her first strike had succeeded in throwing the cultivators on the mountain into chaos, it had also alerted the palace's high-grade cultivators. A ring of white light flashed from the phoenix's body. Just as she was condensing another massive glacier between her claws, two streaks of light suddenly shot out from the barrier below. One was a streak of silver. The other was a sphere of pure white light. They were Bai Yaoyi and the grey-haired old man. Before they even closed the distance, Bai Yaoyi suddenly cried out sharply and sent two silver swords flashing forward. Meanwhile, the grey-haired old man wore a dark expression. He clasped his hands together and summoned a treasure from within his sleeve. The object expanded rapidly as it emerged, revealing itself to be a translucent jade bottle. The bottle shimmered with spiritual light and low rumbling sounds echoed from within it. The Ice Phoenix's emerald eyes flashed coldly at the sight. With a sweep of her massive wings, more than a dozen ice spears instantly condensed in the air, each one nearly 30 meters long. They shot forward like bolts of lightning toward the two cultivators. The old man snorted coldly. White light surged from his hands as he lifted the jade bottle and gave it a sharp shake. Immediately, the bottle released a dozen swirling clouds of black and white light. The moment they emerged, they tangled themselves around the incoming ice spears. An astonishing scene unfolded. Upon contact with the strange light, the enormous ice spears rapidly shrank in size. Within moments, they had been reduced to mere arrows before the light stream sucked them back into the jade bottle. Seeing this, the Ice Phoenix let out a sharp cry. Her massive body blurred and vanished, replaced by a raging snowstorm that erupted in her place. The storm expanded instantly, swallowing the entire surrounding sky. Bai Yaoyi and the grey-haired old man were naturally unwilling to show any weakness. Brilliant light burst from their bodies as they charged directly into the storm. Thunderous explosions echoed endlessly above the giant mountain. Faint flashes of light flickered within the dense blizzard. Strangely enough, however, no other elders from North Night Palace came to assist them. If they were not busy maintaining the two grand spell formations, they were most likely already engaged in fierce battles with other high-grade demon beasts. As the battle outside escalated, Hanli and the others inside Spirit Void Hall could clearly sense the terrifying pressure radiating from above. They exchanged uneasy glances. Arctic Dragon cast a brief look toward the sealed exit, a solemn expression slowly appearing on his face. In a heavy voice he said, "It appears the demons have begun their full-scale assault." He paused briefly. "For this reason, the cavern entrance will remain sealed. If we open it now, disturbances may occur at a critical moment, and all our efforts will be wasted." His gaze swept across the group. "Since I originally planned to rely on your assistance in dealing with these demons, I have absolutely no intention of harming any of you." The grey-robed monk frowned slightly before speaking slowly. "Brother Arctic Dragon's words are reasonable. However, if we succeed in helping you break through your bottleneck, your cultivation will rise dramatically, while the rest of us will be completely exhausted." He folded his sleeves calmly. "Furthermore, being sealed underground for such a long time has made us somewhat uneasy. As the saying goes, the wise prepare for danger before it arrives." His eyes sharpened faintly. "Although we all share some degree of friendship with North Night Palace, your words alone are not enough to reassure us. Are we truly expected to entrust our lives to you so easily?" Arctic Dragon sighed helplessly. "It is only natural that you are cautious. If I were in your position, I would feel the same way." He spread his hands slightly. "What can I do to make you feel more at ease?" A glimmer flashed through the monk's eyes. "Simple," he said. "For the time being, hand the celestial blue cauldron over to the three of us outsiders." He spoke calmly. "Of course, once everything is finished, we will return it to you immediately. That way we can devote ourselves wholeheartedly to assisting you." Both Han Li and the old woman were startled when they heard this, but after a moment they quickly understood the monk's intentions. Yes, that would suffice, Han Li agreed without hesitation. The old woman pondered briefly before slowly nodding as well. However, when the azure-robed middle-aged man heard this proposal, his expression darkened slightly. Master Mojiu, isn't that going too far? He said, shaking his head. You should understand the origins of the celestial blue cauldron. It is the sacred magic tool used by our sect to cultivate the celestial ice flames. How could we possibly allow outsiders to take it? The monk maintained his gentle expression. We will only hold it temporarily. Once we leave this place, we will return it with our sincere thanks. He paused briefly. We have absolutely no intention of keeping it. Please reconsider, fellow Taoist Ouyang. But before the middle-aged man could finish speaking, Arctic Dragon suddenly interrupted him. That is enough, Junior Martial Brother Ouyang. He looked toward the monk thoughtfully. Master Mojiu's proposal is reasonable. I agree to this condition. Then his gaze shifted slowly between the three outsiders before finally lingering on Han Li. But which one of you will safeguard the cauldron? The monk and the old woman both fell silent. After a moment, the old woman spoke first. Since Master Mojiu was the one who proposed this condition, it would only be appropriate for him to keep the cauldron. She smiled faintly. I have always believed him to be a trustworthy individual. Han Li narrowed his eyes slightly as thoughts flashed through his mind like lightning. After a brief pause, he nodded. With your trust, I will temporarily take the cauldron into my care, the monk said solemnly. With the decision made, Arctic Dragon wasted no time. He pointed toward the cauldron suspended high in the air. The massive artifact began to spin slowly as it descended, the blue flames surrounding it, extinguishing one by one. The monk reacted instantly. A thick cloud of green mist shot from his sleeve, wrapping tightly around the cauldron and restraining it like a temporary seal. Although the celestial ice flames could erupt from the cauldron at any moment, he had no fear. After all, his own body contained an extremely cold flame as well. Meanwhile, Han Li transformed into a streak of purple light and flew toward the pillar of violet radiance. After a brief inspection, he had already grasped nearly the entire structure of the technique. However, only by witnessing the method carried through to completion could he fully understand its true essence. That was precisely why Han Li was willing to remain sealed within the cavern despite his lingering doubts. Moreover, he possessed great confidence in his own abilities and did not believe he had much to fear. Even if Arctic Dragon succeeded, his cultivation would remain unstable for some time before becoming a genuine threat. Besides, cultivators at the deity transformation stage were heavily restricted within the mortal world. Before leaving for the spirit realm, Ling Long had left him a jade slip explaining many of the mysteries surrounding those cultivators, which had eased much of his concern. Even so, Han Li remained cautious. With a silent command, he directed the great Yin True Flame to slip quietly into the spell formation and conceal itself beneath a stone. The process went completely unnoticed. Meanwhile, the other cultivators each returned to their respective pillars within the formation. Arctic Dragon began activating the formation once more with a series of finger seals. Brilliant mist instantly filled the cavern. A barrier rose around them again, sealing out the violent blizzard raging outside. Han Li blinked slowly as he carefully observed the formation around him. Although the activated restrictions looked nearly identical to before, the fluctuations of spiritual power were subtly different. With his deep knowledge of spell formations, Han Li quickly began deciphering several of the formation's inner workings. Let us begin, Arctic Dragon said with a deep laugh. If this attempt truly succeeds, I will never forget your kindness. He formed an incantation gesture. Blue flames erupted from his body, rapidly deepening in color until they resembled the dark blue of a boundless ocean. The sight was mesmerizing. The old woman gasped softly. To think you refined the celestial ice flames to such a degree. Her voice carried a trace of awe. I fear you have already reached the highest purity of glacial flames possible within the mortal realm. Glacial flames refined to their absolute limit. Han Li's heart stirred slightly as he cast another careful glance at Arctic Dragon. At that moment, the other cultivators sat down upon their respective pillars. Massive lotus thrones of light slowly bloomed around them. Hanli smiled faintly before taking his seat as well, forming an incantation seal with his hands. Glacial flames erupted simultaneously from all the cultivators. Yet before directing the flames forward, they began chanting soft incantations. As the chanting continued, the lotuses expanded dramatically, growing several times larger in an instant. The flames from the cultivators' bodies spread across the lotus petals, illuminating them in a dazzling display. Hanli felt only a faint trace of heat brush against his skin for the briefest moment. In the next instant, his body was engulfed by the purple apex flames blazing like a miniature sun. Immersed within the roaring glacial flames, Master Arctic Dragon suddenly raised his hand and slapped the crown of his head. A dull thud echoed through the chamber. Moments later, a 3-inch nascent soul enveloped in blue radiance shot out from the top of his head. The tiny nascent soul sat cross-legged in mid-air, its hands forming an incantation gesture. Around its neck hung a jade pendant that shimmered faintly with threads of silver light. It slowly floated 10 meters above Arctic Dragon's body. Then the nascent soul inhaled deeply and exhaled a ball of pure blue flame. This flame was none other than the refined essence of the celestial ice flames, something Arctic Dragon had painstakingly cultivated over the course of several hundred years. The flame hovered in the air and began to dance. Gradually it spread outward and condensed into a blazing wheel of light beneath the nascent soul. With the wheel supporting it, the nascent soul slowly rose out from the sphere of glacial light. The moment the other cultivators saw the nascent soul emerge, they immediately sprang into action. Each of them pointed toward the sphere of glacial light, sending streams of their own glacial flames toward it. However, before the flames could reach the nascent soul, the wheel of blue fire beneath it suddenly spun at an astonishing speed. The incoming flames trembled once before being drawn irresistibly toward the wheel. The wheel instantly absorbed them. 5 different colors dyed the originally blue wheel in brilliant hues, forming an incredibly magnificent sight that left any observer utterly mesmerized. The nascent soul then let out a soft shout. A string of spell seals flew from its hands and sank directly into the flaming wheel. Low booms echoed one after another as the flames quivered violently before detonating in succession. At that moment, the nascent soul's hand seals moved faster and faster. It exhausted its magical power almost in a single breath, releasing spell seals continuously without pause. Under the nascent soul's control, the glacial flames began to rupture and fuse together. Gradually, they condensed into the shape of a lotus: black, white, red, yellow, green, and blue. The 6 different glacial flames could faintly be seen within the translucent petals. Yet the colors blended together seamlessly, forming a breathtaking and otherworldly spectacle. The lotus was nearly 10 meters wide. Compared to the tiny nascent soul hovering above it, the contrast was striking. But as the nascent soul chanted a string of profound incantations, the lotus flickered with brilliant light and slowly began to shrink. Every time it contracted, dazzling rays of light burst from its petals. After a short while, the lotus had shrunk to barely a foot in size. Its petals now appeared solid and tangible, no longer ethereal. 6 streams of flame danced across its surface like living spirits. The 5 cultivators could not help but reveal expressions of astonishment. Nevertheless, they continued to release their glacial flames with even greater intensity. As these flames poured into the lotus, they vanished as if swallowed by an invisible void. At that moment, the nascent soul suddenly opened its eyes. A strange golden light shone from within them. Then it stretched one tiny hand toward the lotus. Crackling sounds rang out repeatedly. Countless threads of blue light shot from its fingertips, attaching themselves to the nearest lotus petal. The nascent soul continued chanting. As its fingers slowly curled inward, the blue light intensified more and more. The threads began trembling violently. A deep humming sound emerged from the lotus. Its petals slowly began to close. One after another, they folded inward. Soon it was as though time itself had reversed. The lotus shrank further and further until it became a small bud. The nascent soul was completely sealed within it. 6 colored flames spun continuously across the surface of the bud, illuminating the entire cavern with brilliant light. Seeing this, the other cultivators formed a spell seal and temporarily ceased controlling their glacial flames. The 6-colored bud trembled faintly before slowly descending. For a brief moment, rays of light burst from it. Then the bud slipped into the sphere of white light. After flashing once more, it sank directly into the unconscious body of Master Arctic Dragon. At that very moment, the other 5 cultivators resumed releasing their glacial flames into the sphere of light. The flames condensed into narrow beams as soon as they entered the sphere. They shot directly into Arctic Dragon's body. The extreme cold contained within the flames stimulated his flesh and meridians, forcing the energy within his body to circulate violently as it attempted to break through the bottleneck of his cultivation. Suddenly, the sound of space tearing apart echoed faintly from within the spell formation. Outside profound jade cave in a remote street within the ice city of North Night Palace, 2 white-robed palace disciples walked side by side. Their expressions were cold, and their eyes scanned the surroundings vigilantly. The gigantic ice phoenix that had been circling the sky earlier had vanished. The 2 elders who had been fighting it had disappeared as well, although the 2 disciples were currently patrolling a secluded corner of the city. Rows of buildings still lined both sides of the street. They both knew that all low-grade disciples in the area had already evacuated. Still, neither of them dared lower their guard. "Finally, we've arrived," one of them muttered as he blinked and looked ahead. The 2 turned a corner and slipped behind one of the buildings. Their surroundings suddenly brightened. Before them appeared a spacious underground chamber nearly 100 meters wide. Inside, a man and a woman were already waiting. When the middle-aged woman saw the 2 disciples arrive, a trace of resentment appeared on her face. "You're late," she said coldly. "If you had taken any longer, we would have started without you." Standing beside her was a tall man with pitch-black skin. Although both of them wore the robes of North Night Palace, their garments clearly belonged to the lowest rank of disciples, far inferior to the 2 newcomers. Yet strangely enough, the woman spoke without the slightest hint of politeness. One of the arriving disciples snorted coldly. "Our allies outside have already begun attacking the outermost layers of the Grand Formation and are still at least 50 kilometers away from the city." His eyes narrowed. "Patrols inside the city are frequent. It took quite some effort for us to find a proper excuse to come here. If we had aroused suspicion, all of our efforts would have been wasted." The woman raised an eyebrow, about to retort, but the dark-skinned man beside her suddenly lost patience. "Enough nonsense," he barked. "Let's act already. Even if this body is merely an incarnation, it will not be defeated so easily." Hearing this, the woman chose to remain silent. The 2 newly arrived disciples also fell quiet, seemingly wary of him. Each of them took out stacks of formation plates and spirit stones from their storage pouches. Working swiftly and with practiced coordination, they began assembling a spell formation. Within a short moment, the outline of a small formation appeared. However, any experienced formation master would have immediately recognized what it was. It was an interim teleportation formation, one that could only receive incoming transmissions. By the time it took to eat a meal, the formation was nearly complete. Suddenly, a series of thunderous explosions erupted nearby. The 4 conspirators were startled. Protective magic tools flashed around them immediately. "A few insignificant demon beasts dare to stir trouble before our sect." An aged voice suddenly echoed through the icy mist. "Old relics like us could hardly sit by and allow such nonsense." As the voice faded, 2 figures emerged from the mist. One was an elderly man with thick eyebrows and long facial hair. The other was a middle-aged man with reddish-brown skin and a longsword strapped across his back. "It's the enforcement elders of North Night Palace." The woman cried out in alarm. "Run!" Her body transformed into a streak of green light as she fled instantly. The other 3 reacted just as quickly and scattered in panic. "If those demons escape, we'll become a laughingstock." The middle-aged man sneered. He flicked his hand. 4 dazzling streaks of swordlight shot forth. 3 screams rang out almost immediately. The sword chi swept cleanly through the woman and 2 of the men. Only the large, dark-skinned man continued fleeing. Even he had stumbled slightly under the attack. Interesting, the middle-aged man muttered. Finding this unusual, he opened his mouth and released a blinding streak of white light. The light shot forward, instantly circling the fleeing man before slicing him cleanly in 2. Meanwhile, the old man with thick brows waved his sleeve. 4 magic treasures shaped like willow leaves flew out and vanished from sight. The next moment, the leaves struck the corpses. Green flowers instantly sprouted from the bodies. A strange shriek echoed as the corpses dissolved into clouds of smoke. The red-faced middle-aged man then turned toward the nearly completed teleportation formation with a grim expression. With a wave of his hand, a dense streak of sword chi slashed downward. A violent explosion followed. The formation vanished, completely replaced by a massive crater. "Let's go," the old man said as he stroked his beard. "Although killing their incarnations won't truly harm those demons, it should at least leave a lasting impression." With that, he transformed into a streak of white light and flew away. The red-faced middle-aged man chuckled casually before leaving as well. Elsewhere, throughout the remote districts of the Ice City, similar events were unfolding. Disciples who had been secretly controlled by soul threads of high-grade demon beasts were swiftly eliminated by the Elders of North Night Palace. Deep underground, within one of the halls of North Night Palace's hidden Arctic dragon border, 6 nascent soul cultivators were gathered in solemn discussion. Among them was the Palace Master herself. 3 of the 6, including the Palace Master, appeared extremely pale, as though their vitality had been severely damaged. Palace Master Liu, a breathtakingly beautiful woman, frowned deeply. It was beyond my expectations that Myriad Demon Valley would bring the Myriad Demon banner with them. Her voice was tense. I originally believed it to be nothing more than an ordinary replica of a spirit treasure. Who would have thought it possessed such terrifying power? She paused briefly. If it weren't for Elders Fang and Huang, I fear I would not have been able to withstand the strike from old Demon Che's incarnation.